Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. It is a very great pleasure for me to welcome Andrea St. Jules to our space today. I had the privilege of first meeting Andrea last year. She began her journey through studying Ayurvedic postpartum care. She's been a birth doula for a long time. Andrea's work is really rooted in nature, all things nature. She is based in Prince Edward Island in Canada. She's spent 20 plus years in spiritual development, holistic living, ceremonial practice, birth work, over a decade of experience in teaching yoga. She really specializes within her birth doula and postpartum doula practice with yoga nidra, really helping clients to settle into their nervous systems, to connect with themselves on a spiritual level. You have offered to our community restorative meditations at our in-person training. Andrea, it is such a gift to have had you come into our community, and it has been so beautiful to watch you unfold in how you have integrated the Ayurvedic postpartum wisdom into all the things that you're already doing, but really watching you sort of reimagine how you're here to serve, like what your calling is in your community. But also, like myself, I feel like this work is as much about connecting to my own inner purpose and my own unfolding in wellness and in being here on this earth. And I really appreciate how your caregiving journey is also so connected with your own journey of discovery and unfolding. And so today, Andrea and I are really here to talk about not just postpartum as a sacred window, but these particular sacred windows of time in life where we have some opportunity to create, I guess, a recognition, to create an honoring whatever stage of the sacred window we're on, which then will impact how we move forward. And recognizing also when we didn't get that honoring, say it was our first bleed, if we didn't get that, which many of us did not, how can we create something moving forward that helps integrate all of these sacred windows? So I'm really grateful for you being here to talk with me about this. And I thought we could start a little bit just with your story and how this rite of passage focus became so important for you.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction, and it's my absolute honor to be sitting here with you and discussing all of these things and to be a part of the Sacred Window Studies. It's really such a true blessing, and it's a community that really embodies everything that it teaches. And even just being at the in-person retreat last June it felt like an honoring of a rite of passage for all of us who were there. It was really special. So I'm happy to be here talking with you today. My story. So yeah. So I'm very, very passionate about women's rites of passage and going all the way back to our first bleeds and our menarche, and how we either were or were not honored and received during that time. And um, yeah, my interest in that obviously grew out of my own personal experience, as it does for many people. And I, from the very first, bleed, I had pretty debilitating cramps. And so I was put on birth control pills at around the age of 14, and prescription painkillers as well, without a second thought. It's just kind of what people did in the area that I lived at that time. So this would have been 25 years ago. No, oh my gosh, way more than that. My sense of time is, yeah, no, this would have been more like 35 years ago. So I just continued on taking the pill for 15 years straight without really a thought as to why I was doing it, other than the fact that, I didn't want to get pregnant, but it was just something that I did. It was automatic. And it took me about 15 years to, I would say when I stopped taking the pill, even at that point, I wasn't yet even aware of the deeper undercurrents of the deeper learnings of feminine empowerment and why we might want to, approach this in a natural way. It sort of just happened. I was at a music festival and I missed taking my pill for about 3 or 4 days. And there was just this kind of moment where I was like, okay, just stop. You don't need this anymore. But I didn't ponder why or anything like that. It was like, I just stopped from that moment on. But the journey after that was quite a lengthy one. And I didn't really open up to learning more about healing the feminine and healing my menstrual cycle on a deeper level for probably another maybe 3 or 4 years after that. And yeah, I ended up in 2010, I ended up going on a journey to Brazil. And it was part of my intention in that journey was asking, what is my life purpose? What am I here for? And through a series of potent ceremonies that I did at the time, I received this really clear message that you're here, your purpose, part of your purpose, or your main purpose is to heal the wounded feminine on the planet. And it just came through like there was a lot attached to it in the way that it came through, and I'm not going to go into details, but that was okay. How? What do I do next? What does this mean? So that's when it all really started to open up on a much deeper level. And at that time, there weren't as many people yet talking about, sacred menstruation and healing your experience of your first bleed and all of these different things. But in Vancouver, where I was living, there were some people that I kind of was introduced to and welcomed me into that world. There was a woman named Andrea St, and she wrote a book, Moon Mysteries, back in probably around that time. She was probably one of the four people in the forefront working in that in that realm. And there was also a woman named Jasmine Starchild who was doing the red tent ceremonies. And so I just started to kind of really drink all of this in. I was like, oh my gosh, and that just kind of sent me into a really deep journey into my womb and healing my womb on all these different kinds of levels. I started to facilitate feminine empowerment courses and workshops, and I did that for about 6 years. And probably the most potent session of the 8-week series that I did was always the one around reclaiming your menstrual cycle as sacred. People seemed to really touched people and landed with people and with me as well. It was the session that my heart felt the most deeply connected to. And I know this is getting into a bit of a lengthy story, but I think what it all comes down to is that it took me many, many, many years. I mean, I've just moved through my menopausal transition. So it's taken me that long to harmonize again with my feminine cycle and um, yeah, all that comes along with having a menstrual cycle, and healing the pain and the wounds and the shame and all of those things. And I really don't want to see future generations having to take the entirety of their menstrual cycling years to discover these things. Um, so yeah, I guess that's a little bit about my story.
Mm. Yeah, it's as I was listening to you, yeah, I think that for so many of us, and I was just talking about this with an amazing person last week about how, we go through life where pretty much every single step of the way we are like connected with what is happening with our fertility, with our cycle. There's like not one part of life that is not impacted by people and their cycle. And we just kind of don't even recognize how much of a factor that is, whether it's like, people, when we first start to bleed and we're, experiencing those things that sort of culture forces upon us, feelings of embarrassment or shame, or that this is a bad thing, moving all the way up through, like there's some aspect of our consciousness that is always deeply tied to that. And so I am so curious because, this is a process that a lot of people will never actually go through, like trying to reclaim their connection with their cycle in a positive way or a different way than we're sort of handed, by cultural norms. When you started to do that work, what did you start to notice about yourself? Like I also really also want to honor how you talked about that moment where you were at that music festival and you're like, I don't have to do this. I don't have to take this. Because I've had moments like that too, where there's like, it's almost like there's just a readiness. And then there's this eye-opening moment where you're like, hey, wait a minute. I'm ready for this change now. But I feel like that was a really that was like a door opening for you, which led you to pursue healing on this deeper level. And so my question is, what kind of impact did that have on you personally? What differences did you notice in your life after you started to do that work?
Oh, well, the one thing definitely is that there's layers upon layers upon layers. So sometimes when you sort of open that type of healing, it can go really deep, and it's not a quick fix. Um, I I really implemented a practice of um, taking the time out as much as I could when I was bleeding. And I had a lot of, you know, practices that I would do. I would stay as internal as I possibly could, really connect on a much deeper level to my blood. I had a sacred, red blanket that I would wear at that time. I would practice free bleeding, which is bleeding without, anything impeding the flow of the blood. There were things like that even that were really profoundly healing for me, because I wore tampons for years and years and years, through the entirety of my cycle, even overnight when I would be sleeping. And I finally realized how detrimental that was to me, not only on a physical level, but also on an energetic level, of blocking that flow and that energy that, we would call it apana in yoga or in Ayurveda, but that energy that wants to be, released back down towards the earth. And the quality of my blood even changed and shifted through flea bleeding. Like some of the clot started to dissipate, and the stagnation started to release, because I realized through months of plugging it, it created a lot of stagnation in my womb and with my blood. So there were aspects of it like that, on a physical level, but also on an energetic level. I also began to notice that the more I dove into the experience of the cramps or the sensations that I was having, that they would transform. They would transform into something entirely different, and sometimes almost even pleasurable. So the cramps were almost like they were like a window or something that was drawing me deeper into myself and into the experience of it, that I'm really grateful that I had, because I think sometimes if you don't have as many symptoms along with your menstrual cycle, then there wouldn't be something that was calling you more deeply into it or into exploring it. And so that was really profound for me. And I've even related that to the experience when you're giving birth, of the way you can experience the sensations. And so, yeah, I mean, in numerous ways, it transformed my life. I got to know myself better, like honoring my body, honoring the, the cycles that we go through, knowing that we're not just constant as feminine beings throughout the entirety of the month, like our hormones are ebbing and flowing, and everything about us ebbs and flows along with that. So coming into a place where I was recognizing and honoring that more. I mean, there were so many things. And I even feel after, gosh, how many years would that have been, from stopping the pill to stopping bleeding? 20 years. Even with 20 years of really, really going deep into all of those things and exploring it, I still feel like now that I'm not bleeding anymore, that there were things that I missed, or that I didn't, completely come to the place that I had wanted to come to with it. But one thing that I will say is that I feel like my transition into menopause has been a lot easier, because I was already in harmony with my feminine being, and with my, with my womb, and, all of those things. So
Yeah,
that's
and we had an opportunity to talk about this a little bit, because we've in the past year we have really started to draw more parallels and connections between these sacred windows, which is something that, I love. I love the term sacred window, and I love that our organization is the Center for Sacred Window Studies. And I never wanted to specify it to postpartum, because I've always felt this like really deep imperative connection with the entire cycle, the entire, all the stages that we go through. So I would love to talk a little deeper about how how the transition through perimenopause and menopause is impacted by that first bleed, but not only, I guess I don't want to say the first bleed, because that for so many of us was not ideally experienced. But how does being connected with our cycle, with knowing ourselves, with understanding our body's cues and honoring and paying attention to them, kind of reframing the common narrative of dismissal about our cycle, how does really reclaiming our connection with that impact how we go through perimenopause? From your experience, I'd love to hear you talk about it a little.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if we haven't already done the work to get to know our bodies and our wombs and our cycles and how they work and how they operate, without any kind of pharmaceuticals or alterations from, drugs and things like that, then, it becomes much more difficult in subsequent rites of passages to know yourself, to know your body. And so if suddenly you're pregnant, but yet, like even fertility, even if we take it through fertility. So if you've been on like birth control, and then all of a sudden want to become pregnant, and you stop the birth control, but your body doesn't even know, like, it's how do I want to say it? It's like your body needs time to remember what your your natural essence would be in that regard. And so, I feel like the fact that I haven't experienced a lot, to my knowledge anyway. I mean, I know there's a vast array of menopausal symptoms that people can experience, but I haven't had an experience of the main ones that I hear people speak about. So hot flashes, night sweats, insomnia, these kinds of things haven't been a part of my experience at all. And I do attribute a lot of that to the fact that I was in a harmonious place with my cycle and with and I haven't used pharmaceuticals for at least 20 years for almost anything in my life. Not to say there's not a time and a place when people need them, but my body knew what it was. My body was in its natural state as much as it could possibly be. And yeah, I sometimes wonder if we would need to do things like hormone replacement therapy if we hadn't already been messing with everything for so many years before. If you're taking birth control for years and years and years, then your hormones they don't know how to behave in a natural way anymore. So then, we have to bring in more pharmaceuticals to, like, when the menopausal transition comes, it's like, okay, well, let's just keep giving you some more drugs because, your body's not managing, your body's having all of these symptoms, which we've come to normalize, and really, I don't know that, yeah, I don't know that they are.
Yeah, there's like a disconnect that happens when we bring in outside things. And sometimes it's so necessary. Sometimes, like, you know, we have autonomy, we can decide, and those things are there. I can't help drawing a connection between, knowing you and what I said at the beginning as I was introducing you, your practice has been so, like, you're so connected with the natural world around you, and that has become a daily practice for you, is to be in connection with the natural environment around you. And I know for myself, and this came up recently in a class that you sent me a reflection on, but how, like, I had this revelation that when I am outside, when I spend time outside, it like creates a reset, and I remember my strengths. I remember who I am. I remember the vibration that I want to be in, which then opens me up to so much more. And oftentimes, like, I will get into like go work mode, and I will just not allow myself to like take the time and go outside and be in connection with the elements around me. For you, how has, that aspect of what is important to you, being in nature and connecting with the elements, how has that worked in tandem with your ability to really connect with yourself and your cycles? How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one-on-one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session.
Well, it's everything really, because I think nowadays we are, you are inundated with so many things that disrupt or interrupt our, our natural way of being, whether that's, artificial lighting, blue light, screens, EMFs, all of these things have quite a large impact on our hormonal system and fertility and all of these things. And I think it's absolutely crucial to stay grounded and connected and spending as much time as possible in nature, especially getting out in like early morning or evening hours and getting that sun, on your skin and your eyes. Um, yeah, because it's, I could, I don't know that I want to go down a whole rabbit hole of the artificial intelligence versus organic intelligence. But I think more than ever now, it's like it's paramount that we keep that connection to the organic and to nature as much as possible. Yeah, and for me, it's the word I'm looking for. It's not something that I think about doing or that I make sure I make time to do. It just is something it's just what I do. It's just like, it's not even a question. And yeah, it's funny. I try to bring nature into the house as much as possible. And I have, actually, I have this little shell sitting right here and it has a combination of waters in it, but there's actually some of the water from the river at the retreat center in Montague, and then some from the province where I grew up in Nova Scotia, Waterfall, and then a little bit that my friend brought me from the Mary Magdalene cave in France. And those were the three waters that wanted to combine and sit next to me while we had this conversation today. So
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I love that you have that practice of collecting the waters and giving the waters back. And there's something so I think it's very opening and it allows us to create, water for me represents flexibility, and water to me also is really reflective of cycles, and that quality in particular, that element in particular is really important to me, and I know it is to you too. And I think that at its very foundational level, developing a relationship with the elements around us and listening to which ones are particularly calling us, it just gives us an immediate slowdown. It gives us an immediate remembering. It gives us an immediate coming back to the root of what is for us, whether that's, in our mental state, whether that's in our physical state, our emotional state. To me, that is so tied to creating a rhythm that is healthy. And so many of us experience cycles that are not rhythmic for us. They're struggling to find that rhythm. They're absent, or they're inconsistent, or they're imbalanced in some way. And so when we're dealing with that reality in the work that you do, how are you helping people to come back to their own rhythm so that they can really reclaim that ability to be in that rooted place? Because I think when we're not cycling in our own rhythm that's aligned for us, we're going to feel that in different areas of our life, not just in our cycle in particular. We may feel it in our heart, or in, the way that things manifest in our lives and our relationships, and the satisfaction we have doing the work that we do. So coming to an ability to have that inner rhythm and have that reflected in our cycle is really important. And so when you are working with people, and based on your own experience, how can we create a steadier rhythm?
mm, still something I'm working on in my own life.
I love
It's
that. Me too.
it's funny, just as we started talking about the water, it started, I mean, it's been raining off and on here today, but it just started to pour. I think, yeah.
I love that.
Um, yeah, so the question was, how am I supporting other people in that regard?
If we, say there's listeners, and I know there are, who are hearing this conversation and are thinking, I am not cycling consistently. My inner rhythm is not consistent. How can I create that?
Hmm. In relation to menstrual cycles specifically, or just
Yeah, I
the
think that's
larger
good. I think
cycle?
that's a good physical marker.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would really encourage people to try to at least take one day off during their bleed and to tune out all outer distractions as much as possible and really just be inside yourself and listen. Um, um, I think it's really important to spend, well, this goes for everybody, I think, in the day and age that we're in, to take times where we are turning everything from the outside off. Because we're really being bombarded more and more and more with so much information, and we outsource our power way too much. And I think that is sort of the crux of this whole scenario, is that women have outsourced their power for way too long, and that's been taken advantage of. And in I mean, this might be kind of a bit of a strong word, but I think our rites of passage have been hijacked to a certain degree, where we don't even recognize that they need to be or should be honored in a different way. It's just yeah. So I think really, and I know it's hard to do, and it really requires a vaster, wider shift in society as a whole, so that everyone around you recognizes and encourages you to take that day off. So it's not like you're having to fight for it or explain to everybody in your environment, your workplace, your family, what that you need this day. That instead they're just coming to you and saying, hey, you need to take this day. So it really needs to become woven into the fabric of our society, I feel, in a deeper way, which is why I'm so passionate. I haven't talked about it for so many years, which is kind of hurts me a little bit. I kind of veered away from talking about some of these things, but I really feel like it's important to talk about it more and more, because yeah, that's the only way that's really, that it's really going to happen. And um, yeah, the only way the only way you can truly honor your cycle is if you go inside and listen.
Mm,
And um, we need to be able to make space for that. And I think the world, it just seems to be getting busier and busier all the time, and people have less and less time for that, at a time when actually we need to devote more time to that, in my opinion. So
thank you. Yeah. And I really relate to the internal struggle and the external struggle of making that happen. It's particularly when the expectation around us is that there is no time taken when those things happen. You just manage and keep going. And I remember when I was first studying with my teacher, Yesha Oakes, the original Sacred Window School, and her practice was that she was very transparent with her clients and said, no, I don't work when I'm bleeding. And I remember learning that from the first time from her and being like, that's wow. That was the first time, honestly, that I had ever heard someone set themselves up in that way. And I was really surprised and also just so impressed that she was doing that for herself. And that has been something that's hard for me. That's hard for me to do, is to give myself that time, particularly at this stage, this stage of life, this pitta stage of life, where we hold a lot. We hold a lot of responsibility. And I have four sons, but as I was listening to you, I was really thinking about, like, if I had a daughter, like, I would want to create that space for her to rest when that was happening. And yet, the things that immediately run through my head are, well, you can't have too many absences from school, or you can't, you can't take too many days off of work or whatever. It's the society that isn't structuring that support within its, you know, general context. So we have the opportunity to create that and get creative about it. But I do think that there is so much that can be done within our own inner consciousness, and also in smaller ways. Maybe it can't be, I'm going to stay in bed all day or I'm going to rest all day. Maybe it's going to have to look a little different, but there is impact that's very real that happens even when we make small shifts.
Mm.
Even when we make small shifts. Yeah, it doesn't have to be monumental or take us completely out of what our responsibilities are in order for it to be impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually have a really beautiful opportunity having 4 sons, because if they observe you taking time to yourself during that window, then they will go on to offer that to their, partners in the future. So I think I think it's not just the women that we need to sort of pass this on to, but it's also the men. Um, and I did just want to add too that I totally recognize and honor that people who have children and families, it's much more difficult to take that time to yourself. And I myself didn't have children, and there's probably a whole other podcast we could do about that. But it's definitely a lot easier to make that space for yourself when you don't have those other responsibilities. But yeah, I think making it a priority, it just models that for the children too. So. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
love that. So when we're thinking about a way forward, for wherever we're coming from, maybe we were raised in a family that really did take time to honor these rites of passage, but maybe we didn't. And so when we're looking at a way forward to create this connection, what comes to mind for you? What has been the way forward for you, and how can we collectively sort of create this in our society?
Yeah. I mean, thinking even just having the conversations that we're having right now, um, I think the every time we bleed, it is sort of like a mini, like if we think about it as like a mini postpartum, um, because it is the bleeding is a pregnancy that didn't take and is passing. So there is also, like there is, whether we recognize it or not, there may be a little bit of a period of mourning that's happening each month, whether we wanted to conceive or not. There is this sort of energetic connection to that. And I think if it becomes like second nature to take time during your bleeding time, then when it comes around time to your postpartum, there'll be less resistance to taking the resting and the nesting time needed during postpartum, because it can be really hard sometimes for people to recognize the need to slow down at that time and just sort of, you know, get through it or keep pushing through it. And so it kind of sets your system up to recognize, or just inherently or innately know, oh, okay, it's time to rest now. And so I think that's one of the important threads that leads into, postpartum and then into menopause, is that, eventually it's not questioned. Um, and it does become woven into the fabric of our society. I mean, I applaud Isha for being able to actually do that, because even though I knew that I wanted to do that the entirety of my time when I was honoring my cycle, I still, to the very last day, found it really difficult to say to people, no, I'm staying home because, there was still something in me that never fully worked through being 100, to be 100% confident to say, I can't do that today because I'm bleeding. And especially if you're someone who doesn't have cramps, because if you have symptoms that are really strong and you actually can't do something, that's more accepted. But if you're like just coming because, you're not bleeding, so I would like to see a world where there's not even an ounce or even a moment of like hesitation to express that and say that as a reason why you might not be able to show up on a particular day. And I think that the more people that actually do that, then it trickles out, like even the first time you heard Yisha say that, and you were like, oh, what? And it gets your wheels turning, right? It's like, oh, I can do that. It almost gives someone else permission to do it too. Yeah.
Beautiful. Andrea, I want to thank you for bringing so much of this wisdom and conversation into our community. I also felt like our in-person training was a rite of passage in a lot of ways for us. I think the intention behind that training retreat is so much more than learning skills that we can take back to our community. The way that our team set it up is for us to experience the qualities of the sacred window and understand how that shifts us in how we move back out into the world. And I'm really happy to hear that that is what was experienced. And, each of us who comes together here in doing this work, each of you listening, we're all here to contribute something of authenticity and something of ourselves. And so this connection and acknowledgement of our rites of passage is something that connects us all. And I'm just really grateful for having your stories and your willingness to share and your guidance, and your facilitation in this community, because it's creating a more connected experience for everybody. And the way that you have moved through your own self-discovery and reclaiming these rites of passage is absolutely fostering a greater opportunity for others to experience the same thing in the way that's right for them, and listening to those moments of calling. I loved imagining you, in those ceremonies, hearing that voice, understanding what your purpose was in a new way. So thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close our conversation?
Mm. Thank you, Christine. Yeah. Yeah, I think I really envision a world where it's not just about getting through, not just about surviving the things, but a world where we're all really, truly thriving. And I think that's what's missing a lot of times. Like people will kind of be like, oh, I'm fine, or I got through that fine, but it's like, but are you thriving? Like, do you feel great? Because that's our birthright, that's what that is available to all of us. And sometimes people, we think, no, we but no, it's like, we have to raise the bar a little bit, beyond just, getting through. And I think this is a really, big part of it, especially for women, like having our cyclical nature honored, and this thread, this continuum that weaves through from the first bleed all the way through menopause. It's none of these things are an isolated event. So I feel like it's really important that it's, being honored right from the get-go. so that it threads through in a really beautiful way. And like we say in the postpartum studies is, 42 days for 42 years. We could take that even further back to to first bleed and but yeah, I think it's really important for our future and for life and yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much. I just was thinking that this morning, like how important it is to really feel worthy of being awesome, of feeling great, not just feeling okay. We don't actually have to accept that. We can expand into really experiencing the most joy, the most peace, the most settled, the most connected. Um, so thank you for that reminder.
Thank
So for
you.
those of you listening, I will make sure to put Andrea's website and her social media handles in the show notes. She has a beautiful presence in both of those places. Please follow her. Please follow her work. And thank you, Andrea. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Christine.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.